What do you think is there in that subconscious? What do you think of the Jungian shadow? What's there?
There's this idea, as you're familiar with too, I'm sure, that this Jungian idea that we all have all things inside of us, that all of us have the capacity to be evil, to be good, et cetera, but that some people express one or the other to a greater extent. But he also mentioned that there's a unique category of people, maybe 2 to 5% of people, that don't just have all things inside of them, but they actually spend a lot of time exploring a lot of those things, the darker recesses, the shadows, their own shadows. I'm somebody who's drawn to goodness and to light and to joy and all those things like anybody else. But I think maybe it was part of how I grew up. Maybe it was the crowd I was with. Maybe, but then again, even when I started spending more time with academics and scientists, you see shadows in other ways, right? You see pure ambition with no passion. I recall a colleague in San Diego who, it was very clear to me, did not actually care about understanding the brain, but understanding the brain was just his avenue to exercise ambition. And if you gave him something else to work on, he'd work on that. And in fact, he did. He left and he worked on something else. And I realized he has no passion for understanding the brain like I assumed all scientists do, certainly why I went into it. But some people, it's just raw ambition. It's about winning. It doesn't even matter what they win. It's just, which to me is crazy, but I think that's a shadow that some people explore, not one I've explored. I think the shadow parts of us are very important to come to understand. And look, better to understand them and know that they're there and work with them than to not acknowledge their presence and have them surface in the form of addictions or behaviors that that damage us and other people.
So one of the processes for achieving mental health is to bring those things to the surface. So fish the subconscious mind.
Yes, and Paul describes 10 cupboards that one can look into for exploring the self. There's the structure of self and the function of self. Again, this will all be spelled out in this series in a lot of detail. Also in terms of its relational aspect between people, how to pick good partners and good relationships. He gets really into this from a very different perspective. Fascinating stuff. I was just sitting there I will say this, that 4-episode series with Paul is, at least to date, the most important work I've ever been involved in all of my career, because it's very clear that we are not taught how to explore our subconscious, and that very few people actually understand how to do that. Even most psychiatrists. He mentioned something about psychiatrists. If you're a cardiothoracic surgeon or something like that, and 50% of your patients die, you're considered a bad cardiothoracic surgeon. But with no disrespect to psychiatrists, there are some excellent psychiatrists out there. There are also a lot of terrible psychiatrists out there, because unless all of their patients commit suicide or half commit suicide, they can treat for a long time without it becoming visible that they're not so good at their craft. Now, he's superb at his craft. And I think he would say that, yes, exploring some shadows, but also just understanding the self, like really understanding like who am I and what's important? What are my ambitions? What are my strivings? Again, I'm lifting from some of the things that he'll describe exactly how to do this. People do not spend enough time addressing those questions. And as a consequence, they discover what resides in their subconscious through the sometimes bad, hopefully all also good, but manifestations of their actions. We are driven by this huge 90% of our real estate that is not visible to our conscious awareness. And we need to understand that. I've talked about this before. I've done therapy twice a week since I was a kid. I had to, as a condition of being let back in school. I found a way to, either through insurance or even when I didn't have insurance, I took an extra job writing for Thrasher magazine when I was a postdoc, so I could pay for therapy at a discount because I didn't make much money as a postdoc. I think for me, it's as important as going to the gym. And people think it's just, ruminating on problems or getting smart. No. If you work with somebody really good, they're forcing you to ask questions about who you really are, what you really want. It's not just about support, but there should be support, there should be rapport, but then it's also, there should be insight, right? Most people who get therapy, they're getting support, there's rapport, but insight is not easy to arrive at. And a really good psychologist or psychiatrist can help you arrive at deep insights that transform your entire life.
Well, sometimes when I look inside, and I do this often, exploring who you truly are, you come to this question: do I accept, once you see parts, do I accept this or do I fix this?
Mm.
Is this who you are fundamentally and it will always be this way, or is this a problem to be fixed? Like, for example, one of the things, especially recently, but in general, over time, I've discovered about myself, probably has roots in childhood, probably has roots in a lot of things, is I deeply value loyalty, maybe more than the average person. And so when there's disloyalty, it can be painful to me. And so this is who I am. And so do I have to relax a bit? Do I have to fix this part? Or is this who you are? And there's a million. That's one like little.
I think loyalty is a good thing to cling to, provided that when loyalty is broken, that it doesn't disrupt too many other areas of your life. But it depends also on who's disrupting that loyalty. If it's a coworker versus a romantic partner versus your exclusive romantic partner, depending on the structure of your romantic partner life, I mean, I have always experienced extreme joy and feelings of safety and trust in my friendships. Again, mostly male friendships, but female friendships too, which is only to say that they were mostly male friendships. The female friendships have also been very loyal. So getting backstabbed is not something I'm familiar with. And yeah, I love being crewed up.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I'm with you. And, you and I are very much have the same values on this. But, that's one little thing. And then there's many other things. Like I'm extremely self-critical. And you look at I look at myself as I'm regularly very self-critical. There's a self-critical engine in my brain. And I talked to actually Paul about this, I think on the podcast quite a bit. And he's saying this is a really bad thing. Like you need to fix this. You need to be able to be regularly very positive about yourself. And I kept disagreeing with him. No, this is like who I am. Like you, and it seems to work. Don't mess with the thing that seems to be working. It's fine. Like I oscillate between being really grateful and really self-critical. But then you have to like figure out what is it. Maybe there's a deeper root thing. Maybe there's an insecurity in there somewhere that has to do with childhood. And then you're trying to prove something to somebody from your childhood, this kind of thing.
Well, a couple of things that I think are hopefully valuable for people here. One is one way to destroy your life is to spend time trying to control your or somebody else's past. So much of our destructive behavior and thinking comes from wanting something that we saw or did or heard to not be true, rather than really working with that and getting close to what it really was. And, sometimes those things are even traumatic and we need to really get close to them and for them to move through us. And that, there are a bunch of different ways to do that with support from others and hopefully, but sometimes on our own as well. I don't think we can rewire our deep preferences and what we find despicable or joyful. I do think that it's really a question of what allows us peace. Like, can you be at peace with the fact that you're very self-critical and enjoy that, get some distance from it, have a sense of humor about it? Or is it driving you in a way that's keeping you awake at night and forcing you back to the table to do work in a way that feels self-flagellating and doesn't feel good? Can you get that humility and awareness of how you're, of your one's flaws? And I think that can create, this word space sounds very new agey, like get space from it. It's that, you can have a sense of humor about how neurotic we can all be. I mean, neurotic isn't actually a bad term in the classic sense of the psychologists and psychiatrists. The Freudians said that, the best case is to be neurotic, to actually see one's own issues and work with them. Whereas psychotic is the other is the other way to be, which is obviously not good. So I think the question of whether or not to work on something or to just accept it as part of ourselves, I think really depends if we feel like it's holding us back or not. And I think you're asking perhaps the most profound question about being a human, which is, what do you do with your body? What do you do with your mind? I mean, it's also a question we started off talking about fitness a little bit, which is for whatever reason, do Do I need to run an ultra marathon? No, I don't feel like I need to. David Goggins does and does a whole lot more than that. So that for him, that's important. For me, it's not important to do that. I don't think he does it just so he can run the ultras. There's clearly something else in there for him, and guys like Cam Hanes and tremendous respect for what they do and how they do it. Does one need to make their body more muscular, stronger, more endurance, more flexibility? Do you need to read harder books? Do you need to? I think doing hard things feels good. I know it feels good. I know that the worst way to feel is when I'm procrastinating and I don't do something. And then whenever I do something and I complete it and I break through that point where it was hard and then I'm doing it, at the end, I actually feel like I was infused with some sort of super chemical. And who knows if it's probably a cocktail of endogenously made chemicals. But I think it is good to do hard things. But you have to be careful not to destroy your body, your mind in the process. And I think it's about whether or not you can achieve peace. Can you sleep well at night? Stress isn't bad if you can sleep well at night. You can be stressed all day, go, 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 go. And it'll optimize your focus, but can you fall asleep and stay deeply asleep at night? Being in a hard relationship. Some people say, that's not good. Other people like it. Can you be at peace in that? And I think we all, I have different RPM that, we all kind of idle at different RPM. And some people are big mellow Costellos and others are kind of like, need more friction in order to feel at peace. But I think ultimately what we want is to feel at peace.
Yeah, I've been through some really low points over the past couple of years. And I think the reason could be boiled down to the fact that I haven't been able to find a place of peace, a place or people or moments that give deep inner peace. And I think you put it really beautifully. It's you have to figure out, given who you are, the various characteristics of your mind, all the things, all the contents of the cupboards, how to get space from it, and ultimately, one good representation of that is to be able to laugh at all of it, whatever's going on inside your mind, to be able to step back and just kind of chuckle at the beauty and the absurdity of the whole thing.
Yeah, and keep going. There's this beautiful, as I mentioned, it seems like every podcast lately. I'm a huge Rancid fan, mostly because I just think Tim Armstrong's writing is pure poetry, and whether or not you like the music or not, and he's written on music for a lot of other people too. He's doesn't advertise that much because he's humble. But
by the way, I went to a show of theirs like 20 years ago.
Oh yeah, I'm going to see them in Boston on September 18th. I'm literally flying there for or I'll take the train up from New York. I'm going to meet a friend of mine named Jim Thiebaud, who's a guy who owns a lot of companies in the skateboard industry. We're meeting there, like a couple of little kids, to go see them play. Amazing people, amazing music.
Very intense,
but embodies all the different emotions. That's why I love it. Right? They have some love songs, they have some hate songs, they have some, but there's going back to what you said. I think there's a song, the first song on the Indestructible album. I think it's sort of, he's just talking about like shock and disbelief of discovering things about people that were close to you. And it's, I won't sing it, but nor I wouldn't dare. But there's this one lyric that's really stuck in my mind for ever since that album came out in 2003, which is, that nothing's what it seems. So I just sit here laughing. I'm going to keep going on. I can't get distracted. There is this piece of like, you got to learn how to push out the disturbing stuff sometimes and go forward. And I mean, I remember hearing that lyric and then writing it down. And, that was a time where my undergraduate advisor, who was like a mentor and a father to me, blew his head off in the bathtub like 3 weeks before. And then my graduate advisor, who I was working for at that time, who I loved and adored, was really like a mother to me. I knew her when she was pregnant with her 2 kids, died at 50, breast cancer. And then my postdoc advisor, first day of work at Stanford as a faculty member, sitting across the table like this from him, had a heart attack right in front of me, died of pancreatic cancer at the end of 2017. And I remember just thinking like, going back to that song lyric over and over, like, and where people would I haven't had many betrayals in life. I've had a few, but just thinking like, or seeing something or learning something about something, you just like, you can't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned that lyric off that first song, Indestructible, on that album, because it's just the raw emotion of like, I can't believe this. What I just saw is so disturbing. Mm-hmm. But I have to just keep going forward. There are certain things that we really do need to push, not just into our periphery, but off into the gutter and keep going. And that's a hard thing to learn how to do. But if you're going to be functional in life, you have to. And actually, just to get at this issue of, do I change or do I embrace this aspect of self? About 6 months, it was April of this last year, I did some intense work around some things that were really challenging to me. And I did it alone, and it may have involved some medicine. Mm-hmm. And I expected to get peace through this. I was like, I'm going to let go of it. And I spent 11 hours just getting more and more frustrated and angry about this thing that I was trying to resolve. And I was so unbelievably disappointed that I couldn't get that relief. And I was like, what is this? Like, this is not how this is supposed to work. I'm supposed to feel peace. The clouds are supposed to lift. And so a week went by, and then another half week went by. And then someone whose opinion I trust very much, I explained this to them because I was getting a little concerned, like, what's going on? This is worse, not better. And they said, this is very simple. You have a giant blind spot, which is your sense of justice, Andrew, and your sense of anger are linked like an iron rod, and you need to relax it. And as they said that, I felt the anger dissipate. And so there was something that I think it is true. I have a very strong sense of justice, and my sense of anger, then at least, was very strongly linked to it. So it's great to have a sense of justice, right? I hate to see people wronged. I absolutely do. And I'm human. I'm sure I've wronged people in my life. I know I have. They've told me. I've tried to apologize and reconcile where possible. Still have a lot of work to do. But where I see injustice, it draws in my sense of anger in a way that I think is just eating me up. But it was only in hearing that link that I wasn't aware of before. It was in my subconscious, obviously. Did I feel the relaxation? It wasn't, there's no amount of plant medicine or MDMA or any kind of, chemical you can take that's naturally just going to dissipate what's hard for oneself. It needs, if one embraces that, or if one chooses to do it through just talk therapy or journaling or friends or introspection or all of the above, there needs to be an awareness of the things that we're just not aware of. So I think the answer to your question, do you embrace or do you fight these aspects of self, is I think you get in your subconscious through good work with somebody skilled, and sometimes that involves the tools I just mentioned in various combinations, and you figure it out. You figure out if it's serving you. Obviously, it was not bringing me peace. It was undermining my sense of justice, was undermining my sense of peace. And so in understanding this link, now I would say that in understanding this link between justice and anger, now I think it's a little bit more of like it's not like a Twizzler stick bendy, but at least it's not like an iron rod. Like, when I see somebody wronged, I mean, it used to just like immediately.
But you're able to step back. Now, that's like, to me, the ultimate place to reach is laughter.
I just sit here laughing. Exactly. That's the lyric. I can't believe it. So I just sit here laughing, like can't get distracted. Just at some point. But the problem, I think, in just laughing at something, like that gives you distance. But the question is, do you stop engaging with it at that point? Like I experienced this, recently I got to see how sometimes I'll see something that's just like, what? Like this is crazy. So I just laugh, but then I continue to engage in it and it's taking me off course. And so there is a place where, I realize this is probably a kid's show too, so I want to keep it, G-rated, but at some point for certain things, it makes sense to go, fuck that.